And it's right on Colfax. So there's just a lot of like exposure to a lot of drugs. And a lot of kids would walk Colfax for lunch and be like, haha, like he's doing fucking meth. That homeless guy's doing meth and heroin. I would never do that. And they would turn around and do fucking lean and coke before math class. And I'm like, you're not better than anyone else. But that's kind of the narrative we were fed, is that some drugs were better than others.
All right. I'm Ben Boyce. This is the Dr. Junkie Show. And today, Maddie returns to dig back into some of what we talked about last week regarding sex work. And we also talk about the culture industry, neoliberalism, cocaine, generational differences between the both of us when it comes to drugs, and representations of sex work in mainstream media. Since Maddie's going to bring this up, a quick reminder for those who didn't happen to listen to the old episode about prison representations. The short story from my work that I published on this is that prison in media is always shown in one of three ways. In all of those ways, well, they lead our culture to ignore how bad our prison system actually is. So in media, on TV, in movies, prison is always shown as either a paradox, a terrible situation that winds up actually making the criminality of people that go there worse, even though it's supposed to fix it. Or it's shown as penance, a terrible place that exists because it has to, and it gives the very few criminals who actually want to change the option to do so. And since most of them don't want to, well, again, prison as penance has to be this awful experience, which, by the way, is really fun to watch. And finally, it's sometimes also shown as a paradise. In fact, these are the movies you're probably most familiar with, where there's lobster and steak and shanks and drugs everywhere in prison, where you can tear a hole in the wall and escape through the ceiling. So what's the point? Well, when we see things a certain way on TV, like sex work or prison or mental illness or black culture if you're a white person, when we see specific scenes or ideas shown over and over in a way that maximize the worst parts of what we should be seeing and minimize the best parts, well, we can't help but start to believe the things we're seeing, that in many ways they're true. And once we, think prisons are actually full of evil monsters, and once we think sex workers are also one size fits all like we see on TV, think of your favorite true crime TV show and how sex workers always show up, shallow, obsessed with money, morally calloused. Once we start to believe most prisoners or sex workers or whatever group we're talking about fit the stereotypes we see in media, well, we naturally start to think less of those people. We care less about them, and because of that, we have an excuse to turn away from their pain. Little Freud there for fans of civilization and its discontents. So what Maddie's talking about when she says sex work is depicted just like prisons, as paradise, punishment, or a confusing system that doesn't fix the things it claims to fix, well, I think she's right. And like I said, she needs to just get it out of the way and go get her damn master's degree, and she should use that project as her thesis. One more thing, kind of related to this, objectification. In capitalism, as Marx showed us 100 plus years ago, everything is reduced from its natural, real-life form, including human nature and even relationships, and it's boxed, sold. In a word, it's objectified. And since this is not a natural position for us humans to be in, it's not comfortable. It makes us all anxious, lonely, alienated, depressed. But in our culture, we don't really talk about that. I think Maddie and I wound up spending way too much time kind of spinning our tires on this concept of objectification because she's really close to her example. But if you've been listening a lot to this show, you should at least know what I'm trying to get at when I'm always reminding everyone, and in this case her, that everyone who engages with capitalism is agreeing to be objectified. I mean, it sucks, but that's why we should keep talking about it. When I say, can I take your order at the restaurant, I don't want to do that. And I can be replaced by another guy who will do the exact same thing if I don't do what they want me to do. I'm an object. Okay, with that, I give you back Madeline Grace. So how are you feeling in the land of fascism and fake news and AI that's on the verge of, I don't know, what do you think, another 5 minutes before we see a assassination that didn't happen that half the country believes did happen?
You know, as a white woman, it doesn't entirely affect me. I think the fact that I'm doing part-time jobs right now in white women fields like retail it's easier for me. I haven't really been, and I'm embarrassed to say this, I haven't really been a part of protests against ICE or anything, no kings, no fascism, anything like that. I was super involved in BLM, walkouts for gun violence in schools. I was really big on that. That was like my whole high school career. Everything, in 2020, 2021, I was really big on that. And then it just kind of got so big for me, like the world got too big. And so I really praise the Gen Zers who are out there protesting and making a difference. It's incredible to watch on social media with the little social media I have that's not controlled by AI.
So I think close to just getting rid of all of them.
I just have YouTube. I don't have anything else.
Yeah. So. It's good for you for calling it social media. Most people, that goes right over their head.
Yeah, they're calling it like a video platform now, like YouTube, but it is news, part of it. I mostly listen to NPR, though, and they don't really cover that stuff.
No, it's all propaganda. I can't actually name one right now that's not propaganda, we're only week 2 of the semester, and so far I'm still breaking a lot of my students' brains when I know that you hate one group and like the other, and that one group sounds like at least they're being honest, but like, trust me, they gotcha. You can't eat chocolate syrup or strawberry syrup all day, every day, and not have it literally impact who you are and how you interact with the world. And then you're like, I just think chocolate tastes bad. You're forgetting you also are literally a different person than you were before you started eating nothing but chocolate syrup. That's a weird analogy. We do a lot of weird analogies on this show.
I think you do a lot of weird analogies in general.
It's an Aspie brain. It works in front of a class like 2/3 of the time, but that 1/3.
How is your class?
Oh my God, it's so good. It's been
yay.
You've been in a couple where they're always great students, because that's just like, this is why I like CU Denver. People like me, it's the school you go to if you're just trying to get an actual education, as opposed to get a degree that has, Harvard or something on it. And it just brings in they're more interested in education for education's sake. But I've had classes that you've been in where conversation's hard for Gen Z and even for millennials for some of them, but feels like your generation split, and we saw it in COVID too. There were 2 ways to get through that. The foam rise to the top. I think I'm using that analogy right. It was really easy for a huge group of like high school students to get fucked and to not engage and to like kind of just half-ass their way through it, because half of their, if not more, their entire high school education was online with the most addictive video game porn technology all around them, and they like could just turn their screen off, right? Or just not really engage. But then it forced the people that realized, oh, this is going to be tough and locked down. Something happened with some of you that it really locked you in.
Yeah, it did lock me in. It also, speaking on our topic, there was not a lot of employment opportunities at that time. So that's kind of what drove me to do sex work. Sex work.
All right. I just want to make sure we know.
Porn.
There's I think kinds of sex work, but porn is the
I did. I mean, I did a lot of it. I did the prostitution, like the in-person for drugs, and that coupled with my addiction was pretty hard to kick, because it was that instant gratification of like, okay, I made this person happy. He's going to give me a bag of Coke, and I'm going to go on my way and go to my friends, and it's going to be great. But I think COVID really changed my brain in that sense. Like, yes, I really did lock in for college. I had to. That's how I got into Boston University. That's how I got scholarships to all the other colleges, but Boston University. And it was a life achievement for me when I got into BU. Should I have gone there? Probably not. Should I have gone to any of the colleges I applied to? Probably not. I didn't do my research. I wanted that degree, like what you were talking about. I wanted the Harvard, the BU, and then I realized that no one actually gives a shit.
Nobody gives a shit.
No one actually gives a shit where you go, because I worked my ass off in college at CU Denver, because I had dropped out of BU. I was still doing some sex work, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. This is not my goal in life. Props to everyone who wants to do sex work and excels at it. in their life. That is amazing. You go, you've cracked the code. Me, it wasn't particularly for me because I wasn't in control. And when I was in CU Denver, I was completely in control of my education, of my future. That's why I got a 4.0 and self-produced that podcast series and did the cider conference and went to prison and did all of this stuff. But it doesn't really fucking matter in the end, especially in the world of fascism and AI. I could put that I went to Harvard, got a 4.0, and they wanted me to actually be the president of Harvard, and AI would read that over and say, well, you have no experience in journalism, so we don't want you.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, I'm thinking there's 2 tracks here, and you've added like a 2.5 track, but the one you're focusing on is just credentials for credentials' sake, and neoliberalism feels like it's at something of a. I thought it was breaking, and now more and more I'm like, I don't see it yet as much as I thought. I think it's just sort of shifting shape and growing into the next, tumor on the balloon or whatever. But on one side of this is that degrees are valuable for the sake of having them because people don't think about it, but you literally are buying the right to claim you can do something so that somebody who would otherwise not pay you X amount of dollars to do it will trust you to do it. The alternative to that is like you really get to know the person well and you really prove to that. Who's got time for that? This is capitalism, right? That was so valuable that even to this day, it strikes me as odd that I doubt any of my students, if I ask them, how much do you pay for this class? I bet most of them, if not all of them, wouldn't actually know off the top of their head. How often do you buy a product that fucking expensive and not know what you paid for it? Pretty weird, right? From a guy you've never met, because now you also in college just show up the first day. The other line, though, I want to make sure we hit on is that I think we're like-minded in that this has become a bit of a replacement drug for us, luckily. So it helped with our recovery, but that learning for learning's sake actually now I think is more valuable than ever before. So sorry, take whichever one of those you want, but I think they're both. Because somewhere in there is neoliberalism finally having a hole in it, which maybe if it discredits itself, the benefit of education gets bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to talk about the neoliberalism of sex work. You don't have to get to know someone. I mean, some of my clients did really want to get to know me. I had one in particular who was a longtime one, and he knew what he liked about me, and he wanted to get closer to me. He even wanted to fly me out at one point. I think he lived in California or something. And so that was different for me because most of the time it was kind of like the quick fix of, here's a picture, here's a video. You paid X amount of dollars for that, depending what it is, and you move on. It's instant gratification, like what I was talking about. I think that is also neoliberalism because now we have so many options as to how we get off, right? Yeah, how we choose porn. For some people, it was OnlyFans and it was paying that money. For others, it was just free Pornhub. Like, I'm sure some of my stuff got on Pornhub and it's now free. And that's what I mean when I say I'm not in control. When you do sex work in a neoliberalist, capitalist society, what you put out there after it is published and sent and paid for is not your own anymore. It is repurposed. And for that, I want to use I don't think you know what Depop is, but it's a clothes reselling site, right? Yeah. So you sell old clothes, buyer pays for shipping, buyer pays, you send it to them or give it to them, depending where they live. And then there's an option after you get them called repop. And repop is to put that back on your profile for more money. So let's say I bought a sweater from someone for $20. I got it, I wore it a couple times, and then I was like, okay, I don't really want it anymore. I could repop it, put it back on my shop for $40.
Because of who you are, or just because of vintage stuff has its own value? Are you talking about?
I don't think that specifically involves what I'm talking about. I think it's that things can just be sold and bought. Yeah, it's things are valuable for some time. We were on
sex work and I suddenly had this thought like, oh, are you saying like you were selling it on your specific site, which actually would have worked. I mean, like, I wonder how these women who sell dirty panties, what they actually do, because my guess is they just mass produce them. Like, who's going to wear a bunch of new panties? And that's just gross. Like, go do something, figure out what the scent is and spray it on there and sell 1 million pairs. Good for you, girl. That's what I thought you might be saying is you were selling a hoodie that she actually wore. And you're right. All of that is the selling of the clothing is now a separate slightly topic. You're not saying you were selling it because people were watching videos. You should have.
I didn't. I I was going to get into the underwear business, and like you were talking about, it's just too fucking hard. I didn't want to use brain energy on that when I was actively trying to get well from
I'm guessing
being
there's a whole
addicted.
industry where you could buy like 1,000 pairs pre whatever. They probably
Mhm.
send you different kinds. There's some with skid marks. There's some that like somebody peed on, and none of it's real. But there's like a whole shop somewhere. This is neoliberalism, so I also like that you're starting this by weaving them together. We're talking about sex work and weird industries, but really what we're talking about is yet another iteration of what neoliberalism does to a culture.
Right. I mean, I remember, and this involves the Depop thing, the clothing thing, getting something and then selling it for more or less after you're done with it. My sex tapes, my pictures, my videos, everything like that would be taken and recorded because OnlyFans doesn't have that technology, or maybe they just neglect to do that. I don't know. I have beef with OnlyFans, but they choose not to put this technology in place where you can necessarily save that. It can be yours.
Yeah.
It's private and
You can't
everything like that.
screenshot, right?
You can. You
Oh, I
can.
mean,
And
there
you,
is technology where supposedly you
yeah.
can't. It's just a lot harder too. You got to add all sorts of
It probably would cause them to take more money from the
right.
pockets of creators.
There you
And
go.
I think neoliberalism wouldn't necessarily allow that. So I think
And
creators
then
are
they'd sell the
okay.
viewers the software to get around the goddamn software, and
Yeah,
they'd
they
make
would.
money on both sides. Again, neoliberalism's magic if you start rich.
It is. And I mean, my content would be taken from me and bought and sold at higher or lower prices. And that to me felt like I was being bought and sold. Like I'm an object. I'm actively working
Right.
in therapy, recovering from, an abusive relationship and the sex work and acting like I was straight when I'm actually not. I am a lesbian. So it's hard for me to be around men in spaces where I feel like I'm an object. Here's the story is that I was hanging out with a group of guys. They were my friends' boyfriends. And, there were some other guys who weren't dating anyone at the time. And I was, fearing like, oh, I'm going to have to be an object. I'm going to have to flirt. I'm going to have to let them down. And they actually, I immediately went off by saying, I have a girlfriend. I'm in love with her. Love women. And they actually treated me like a person, like a
Isn't it
guy,
fucking magic? I almost said
like
that
a
earlier.
guy.
Like, you might have found a Joker card of patriarchy.
I
All
did.
power systems have a silver lining, even for the oppressed group. It's just usually a very small silver lining. But hey, if you can cry when you get pulled over and it gets you out of a ticket, ladies, fuck, do it.
I can cry when I get pulled over, but then at the same time, I can act masculine in front of these guys and be like, yeah, like I like boobs and stuff like that. And they'd
Yeah.
see me as one of them. So that's something I've been working on in therapy. And it's been very healing for me, honestly.
I
It's
bet.
healing past the sex work because I was put into a box when I did sex work. I was feminine and I was straight. And I had to like dick and I had to like all of this stuff that men thought was appropriate for me. And now I'm finally kind of breaking out and considering what I went through and everything. I think I'm doing pretty damn well. That's
I'll give you kudos. I invited you on to talk about stuff, and every time we come on to talk, we don't end up talking as much about what I even thought we would. So this is good. And this is, I
that's
think,
kind of
engaging.
podcasting.
Well, and this is what's good here is we'll hit on the generation thing again too, only because I think that's a big part culturally of between neoliberalism and everything else, the different worlds we grew up in. Sex work is one that I've had people on to talk about it before, but it's a little. I've never even been in a position where I considered doing sex work, and I've been a consumer of it my whole life. Porn is everywhere, and we talked a little last time about responsible consumption and just being a big boy or girl and like going to the site that you maybe got to pay people appropriately for their work and try to pick a feminist one. You're doing yourself a favor by just programming yourself a little bit different, and it works. Don't worry, you're not gonna be in there like, where's the naked people? Oh, they're there. There's whatever you want still in there. My dad and I have actually had a couple conversations since last week when he listened to it about the differences between generations and how we dealt with what neoliberalism's whole job is to make things that have always been part of being a human that we need go in a box that we can wrap in some nice wrapping and put a brand name on it. And what you're describing is like personal relationships. The part of a human, we don't use our nose a lot anymore just because we're not in the wild trying to survive by smelling smoke or an animal before it eats us. That's still a part of us that actually is part of getting to know somebody, especially romantically. You get used to their smell. It becomes natural. It calms you and you don't even realize it. We're now putting that in boxes, and we don't talk about it this way. It's just an industry, baby, because everything is industry in neoliberalism, but everything you're talking about has relationships sort of floating around in it too, and the different ways, the creepy urges everybody, especially men in high school, because we're told, well, you're supposed to feel that way, and how we deal with them. Freud was right that we all want to smack, to this day, every one of us, I promise y'all, if you pay attention, you'll see it now. You want to smack like 10 asses. And you immediately, when that thought starts to show up, you probably tell yourself, shut up, and the whole thought doesn't even get in your head because you would never, right? And who would even think such a thing? But trust me, you're human. That's just how it works. That is always going on where it's being repressed. And when you're a high schooler and those urges start to show up, everybody right now, if you're thinking back to your own past, has really awkward stories where you were either the recipient of something creepy or like that you were kind of excited by. Or so even my dad were talking about, it wouldn't have been completely out of the ordinary, even in the 70s when he was a kid, to be kind of a creep or maybe a little presumptuous and to say to a young woman with you, like, hey, how much would you charge to make a porno video? But it would be a production. We're talking go get a camera, and it's not normalized. The woman's going to be thinking like pornography, and it's not everywhere. And last time you hit on ubiquity, it's ease of access, and it's everywhere. It's just expected. When kids nowadays are doing the same math, which is totally normal, and the young boys, eventually men, are in the position in a patriarchal culture where their images, I'm the president, I'm the CEO, I get shit done, I build the house, I'm the head of the household, because that's what they get all the time. It makes sense that, of course, what they're doing is engaging in their fantasies that everybody has, the way that technology makes possible to them. I'm throwing spaghetti at you. I'm sorry there's a ton there, but hopefully some of them.
Well, let me add a meatball, because I think that when we read Lessons from Shawshank in your class, I think that Prison as Penance, Prison as Paradox, and Prison as Paradise falls into sex work as well. I have experienced all three. I would say sex work as penance for me would be to be punished for doing what I was doing, to have my shit replicated, my content replicated, stolen, blackmailed, all of that, because I was doing something that men deemed I couldn't do because I didn't belong to one person. I didn't belong to them. And that's the objectification again. I think there's a lot of objectification in sex work still. I experienced it at a very young age. At an age of 18, I was still a child, honestly. And that's what I think they liked about it, is that I was so naive and so innocent that I could do whatever the fuck they wanted. And I would just do it. Sometimes for free. Like, I remember sending nudes at 15 because some guy really wanted them. He screenshotted them and showed them to the whole school. And he didn't get in trouble for it. No, but I got in trouble for it. I was a slut.
I think that's a way more common story. I think it's not talked about much because of how you just ended it, and I was the slut. So what are you now going to go tell every new friend you meet right when you meet him this story? Good for you now for being to where you can, but that shame that comes with the story it's why so many women in our country are raped. I didn't look this up, but it's massive. I was talking to my aunt about this last week, and I realized I only know maybe 2 women in my entire life, including family members, who have never been sexually assaulted. That is fucking bananas, people. But you know how many of them reported it? Not even half of them. Why not? Because they've learned what you just said that isn't actually true, but that's how our programming works. It just plays out in the split-second decision, and then it's too late. And you look at E. Jean Carroll, who even having done as much as she could and actually getting an $82 million conviction that our rapist president still fucking owes her, she's probably never going to see a penny of it somehow in the system. That didn't even vindicate her. People would still say shit like, it was a democratic courtroom. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and I think what you're getting at is that sex work as penance is victim blaming. Let's just put a name to it. It's victim blaming. And sex work as paradise, I know there's this really popular creator on TikTok. I can't remember her name for the life of me, but she makes so much money just doing what she loves. She loves sex work. But she also warns girls about the dangers of it and why you shouldn't get into it when you're 18. I think that is so smart. That's just manipulation of capitalism is what it is. It's just capitalism. So I think sex work as paradise is just free capitalism. Now, sex work as paradox, I think that's something more tricky to get behind because... That's what I
see in all of this, actually, is the paradox.
I think, that's what I mean, is that I remember this conversation I was having. It wasn't a conversation, it was hostile, but it was over the OnlyFans platform. I was still 18. I was about 2 months into my OnlyFans. And I remember this guy was so mad at me for not, I don't know, not sending him something that I didn't want to send. And he was like, well, you think that you're such a big shot, you're a big bitch because you're claiming your body, but you're not. I own you. And it was those words, I own you. And it was like, I got into this because I wanted to claim my body. I wanted to make money off my body. And at the end of the day, I was still just objectified. It was still sex work as
There's
penance.
no off switch. Yeah. I'm also hearing objectification, this term that keeps coming up. And it's a term that comes up a lot because I was raised, we've talked about some of these. I don't even see skin color. I was raised with almost idioms that were so kind of happy statements that were supposed to get me out of a jam that they didn't even mean what I was saying. So like with I don't see skin color, I was trying to say I'm definitely not a racist. And porn, my simplified reason was number one, God wouldn't like you looking at naked women. It's less it's your wife, Ben. Jeez Louise. Okay. Number one aside. Number two is it's objectification. And that's not untrue, but there's got to be an answer to that is a moral. We're not changing it depending on who's talking about it. And the way I try to explain it when this comes up in classes, because of course in my class everything comes up and we talk about it, is that if somebody is deliberately asking to, or trying to be objectified, that's something people enjoy. That's the difference. The second, and we've like really teased this apart, you repeatedly have drawn this line that you note, especially because you're the person when it's crossed, between when you were objectifying yourself and doing it for whatever reason you chose, because it's enjoyable, because you wanted to make some money while you could.
I'm going to stop you right there. I'm stopping you right there because I don't think I was objectifying myself. I took a sex and media class. I took a feminist class at CU Denver. Both amazing classes, by the way. Great professors. Highly recommend. But I think what I learned in those classes is that it's not objectifying when you put yourself out in sex work, because then again, that's victim blaming. That's saying you asked for this. You objectified yourself. It is.
I guess that's what I was trying to get at. I don't think objectification's a bad word.
I think it is, especially...
It is if it's being done to you without your permission. So consent,
right, but why would you...
Consent is the word I haven't said yet. That's what I'm trying to root this in. If somebody wants to be objectified and they've consented to it, the whole scenario changes for me. I guess somehow I should have thrown that word in earlier. And if they haven't, and that's the line I'm trying to point at, but when I see sex work, what I see is people... Maybe this is where you can drill in on it, because I told you I'm not real familiar with OnlyFans. Were you really under the impression that all of these people, they're not going to know you. They're not going to know your favorite fucking food and your favorite song and what side of the political aisle you're on. And if they would have asked, my guess is you would have said, this isn't about humanization, dude. This is capitalism, and capitalism is always, I'm selling you. So maybe the word object's getting in our way, but can you tease out? I mean, you might change my mind here. I think the word objectification is sort of stigmatized because it so often is only used when it's the bad kind, but I think it's okay to be an object.
I would disagree, just based on personal experience. I never thought of objectifying myself, and when that term was thrown at me, it was almost offensive, and it was almost like...
How about factory workers? They're objects. That's what I'm trying to... What different word would you use? Because I don't think it's offensive
I think
to say...
consent to capitalism. I think I consented to capitalism, but I wouldn't say objectify, because I went into it not wanting to be an object. I wanted people to kind of see me as my body, as powerful and all of that. And of course, that's not going to happen. I was fucking naive and blissful.
Actually, I think it can.
But I think with my generation, no.
Yeah,
with my generation, no.
And with the system, because like you explained, if you were trying to do it the way I was kind of spitballing, and I don't think that's usually the goal of most people in pornography or in the sex work industry at all, is to like, every client, I have the best personal relationship. We go to church together and they know my... Generally, it's actually the opposite. There are deliberate walls built up, which we're all so used to because we live in capitalism. But I guess I would call the person working behind the counter at Wendy's an objectified object, because if we don't talk about it that way, capitalism's nastiest parts stay totally invisible.
Okay.
So my alternative is like, no, they just want to say, welcome to Wendy's. What can I get you today? And not punch me out when I say,
no,
like, it's your fault my fries are cold.
Like, let's say we're all objects of capitalism. We're all objectified in terms of
Whether we like it
capitalism,
or, yeah.
whether we like it or not. But I don't like that term in terms of men and like myself. Like, I objectified
I dig
myself
it.
to men
I dig
because
it.
that's not empowering. That's actually victim blaming. And it's telling me that whatever sexual assault, revenge porn, whatever happens after this is completely my fault. And I was
No,
told that for
does it work
years.
that way in the factory? If I say, yeah, but you, or somebody at the Wendy's, do you buy the analogy? First of all, first step first, let me not put words in your mouth. Do you buy the application to make sure capitalism stays on blast of saying when you do consent to work and you have to pay your rent, you are almost always in capitalism immediately objectified to some level and you consent. That doesn't mean we're telling you you're a victim. But if you then go to the back and somebody throws fucking hot grease on you, or Wendy says, let's leave the specific company out of this, but the organization you work for has made unsafe working environments and you slip and fall. That's where I'm missing the disconnect, is like, just because I'm implying you are here to do a job that we all agreed to be, even me as a teacher, I'm still, in many ways, I have to conform to being objectified in that space and to conforming to rules I don't necessarily always like, and I wouldn't. If I then get a wall falls on my head and hurts me and somebody says, well, you were at the job, now I see where you're going. I would say that's why we got to draw that distinction. You engage with capitalism in a way you chose freely, right? You weren't
Right.
compelled to it. But then it really quickly, in this particular industry, what you were consenting to, your consent went out the fucking window. And that's what I have a problem with, is your
I
consent being like not important.
I have a problem because there's workers' comp. If someone throws hot grease on you, you slip and
No, that's
fall.
my point. What if I
But in
said there
sex
shouldn't be
work,
because they're objects? There shouldn't be workers' comp.
I don't want to
Then
argue that. I just
no,
want to
what
say
I'm saying is
there's
then
no
I would be, I'm not doing that with you either. I'm saying that's the difference. I would say if you are an object when you're taking my order, if you now go in the back and the system doesn't work the way it should and your work you just did is stolen and spread across 13, I'm trying to weave the two examples together. This work you did that you agreed, like, I'm going to sell you not all of me. You don't own me. I'm selling you pieces, and I'm looking for a better word maybe, but what we do with capitalism and what you were engaging with, and then people start to expect more from you, almost like they thought you were selling them actual relationship, which is the trick of capitalism, right? To say that is what it is, happiness, contentment. But the people working at Wendy's should not be expected to like
well,
have to go out with the people they sell fries to after work, because you're an object when you're there. You're being forced. But again, I don't want to twist your arm out. I think I more want to understand if where am I missing, and then also how can we distinguish between, if there's a better word we can use than objectification that still keeps capitalism's nasty underside on blast, because we don't want to let that.
I think what you're missing is it's neoliberal capitalism. It's
Right.
like my clients had a choice of whoever they wanted to spend money on, tip, buy stuff from, and they chose me. So they feel entitled to me. They feel entitled to a service that they paid for, that whatever in their mind, there's no contract for. Like, there's no contract for capitalism, right? There's a contract generally for work. Like, if you're working in fast food, again, you slip and fall, that's workers' comp. I don't think there's any regulations on sex work because it's so taboo. It is just so dirty in society, but we all use it. We all benefit from it.
It's
And so
not
I
dirty
think
to all of us. I'm like, I'll sit here.
I'm just saying that generally,
No, you are absolutely right. It
yeah.
is for like 98 out of 100 people. Don't bring that up in polite conversation. But I'm
But
the two that like I'll talk about anything.
I was placed in a position when sex work was penance to disown sex work, to say it's horrible, to disagree with it, to talk shit on it. I was put in that position to do that because that was like how I became holy again. I was a victim of the system, but I was apologizing for the whole system. I was apologizing for
Right.
everything. So,
This is where I'm headed. There is this line that at least at Wendy, or at least at the fast food restaurant, like it's usually not crossed. And what we're getting at is there's this industry called sex work where the line is technically it's there. If you were a millionaire, you could have fought this out and probably even got some payouts. But like you mentioned in the last episode, that's the trick of capitalism. Everybody wants to buy in, but if you're not already rich, you're not going to get the same treatment as everybody else, even if you're just arrested and you're poor versus rich. You just said the systems thing, and I appreciate that we're pulling it back to that. How does the system work? That seems to be the problem with me, is there's so much stigma around this shit that we not only don't talk about it, we don't even we regulate it minimally. You got to be a certain age, and the industry might have to prove they have proof that people were a certain age. But other than that, there's very few lawyers out there saying, hey, have you had your sex tape stolen? Call me and I'll cover you for free. And if I don't get a payout, you don't pay me. Like, where are those ads? That's what Stigma does. It makes the objectification that we need a better word. So I'm still looking, maybe we can come up with one, but it makes whatever we signed up for, which is not human relationship. Even in my class, I go a lot farther, but I don't automatically think any of those students should expect me to come pick them up when they're drunk at 2 a.m. on a Friday night, right? That's what it might feel like in my class, but that's because I'm selling you what I'm supposed to provide. And then I'm, of course, also being me. So I don't know. I'm looking for how we focus on the system and say capitalism always has this expectation that we'll sell out, maybe is another way to, no, it's not quite right here, but with Wendy's, that like, there's no way I'm going to sell people cheeseburgers for some dude that I don't even know all day unless they're going to recomp me, in this case with cash. That's probably largely why you were doing a lot of what you were doing, but that comes with borders, that those borders have to be respected. You can't expect me to work 70 hours just because you say, I'm not going to do it. I'll quit. You can't expect me to rebuild the roof when you hired me to take orders for burgers. That's what I'm trying to tease out. Is it feels like the real problem here is that the industry is just not regulated because we won't talk about it.
True. And I think another issue is that there's no justice. Justice is so different than a payout to me. I don't want money for these guys doing what they did to me. I want them to say they're sorry. I want a letter addressed to me saying, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. And I can't get that, you know?
Sound like me now. I want heart
but
changes.
That's what I want. That's my generation. My generation is about justice. We're not about payouts.
I hope you're right about that.
I know I'm right about that. I know I'm right.
I see it in some of you, but I also see, of course, it's social media land, so everything's sort of filtered to the most extreme examples. But there's a lot of people, even famous influencers, whose name I'm not even going to mention because you already know it, that are literally like bragging about never having had sex with a woman, but also not being gay and being attracted to women, but being so disgusted by them in real life that they would never, and they don't even have the space to self-reflect the industry, the entire larger culture, and the sexualization is the wrong word, the sexual identities we all get at a certain age, regardless of what the world around us offers us to fulfill those urges. That all seems to be coming together, and I hope you're right, and there's a lot of you with better hearts, but I guess I haven't had enough chance to have the same conversations with your generation, aside from you and a few others that I've had with others, but even asking people where they get their morals seems to still break their brain and piss them off. And if we haven't done that yet, right, like why is sex work okay? The only two answers.
Because we all get off. We
Fair
all get
enough.
off. Sex work should be legal. It should be regulated, is what I'm saying.
What's
There needs to be
regulation?
protections behind it, laws behind it. I don't necessarily know much about the financial aspect of it. I think we would need to bring in other OnlyFans creators about how much money they make, because some of them make millions a month.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not here to argue capitalism. I'm here to argue safety. And I think that there needs to be so much more regulation behind sex work to protect 18-year-old girls like me. There's an 18-year-old super famous on TikTok, just got into OnlyFans. People are berating her. And I see both sides. I see that she felt like she had no other option. Yeah. And this is the career for her. It's easy. It's a really fucking easy way to make money. But it's also, people are telling her that she sold herself out. But how can we blame her when this is the society we live in? How can you blame me at
thank you. The wrong word still I might have been using the wrong language with you, but
it's not objectification.
Our hearts well, yeah, but it's the culture, which
it's culture.
You do get it with the fast food worker, right? Does that analogy at least work, that you're objectifying?
Sure, yeah.
What's the difference?
Except
you're lucky. What's the difference between a fast food worker who's like, I can't just like figure out a way to get passive income. I guess I got to go sell myself to, again, using this language deliberately, sell my time, sell hours of my life to a corporation so that they will give me money if I do what they say. And some of us get lucky. I'm still in a corporation. You kind of even avoided that, but we find niches where we're interacting with the same system and we're still doing the same thing. Instead of the McDonald's paying you, or instead of getting paid by a corporation, we get paid by individuals. If I ran the podcast a certain way, it could be the same thing. If I was always asking my listeners to give me money, they have the on-off switch and I'm selling them something. I'm selling them a product. I'm looking for the difference between sex workers and the fast food worker, aside from that one has a boss named XYZ Corporation and the other is lucky enough that their boss is Timmy from Alabama. She's almost certainly the pastor of the local church.
So where are we going from here? Because I think we're sort of agreeing on something.
Not that I need to beat this word objectification into the ground, because there is something about realizing a word hits a tone that you don't mean it to hit that I would like to avoid. So if that's what that word does, I'm still looking, though, for the difference between how to describe the fast food worker, the teacher in front of a class that works for a university, and the sex worker who basically works for OnlyFans. We're drawing a distinction that you think that, yeah, we could call the first two objectified, but if you call the third objectified, it may be a slam. Like,
Yeah.
Can we make sure that's not just the result of this stigmatized culture we live in? Because I think that's what we agree on, is that the system is so, like, you can't fuck somebody over at a fast food restaurant because our system is, the regulation you're talking about, it's there. There are lawyers who literally will take your case for free if that happens, but there isn't with sex work, and the laws about exploitation aren't even that strict. If our goal is to say sex work is like any other work, it needs protections and you shouldn't stigmatize it, you're the one buying it, why draw the difference between them and the fast food worker?
Fast food workers, teachers, you're protected cogs in the machine of capitalism. You're protected objectification. You are protected. And I don't know if I want to use the word objectification, so I'm just going to say that sex workers are exploited. We are exploited by the system. We are not protected. I wouldn't say objectification just because it has such a negative connotation to it in feminist terms. That's just me, though. I know tons of feminists, and praise them, they would have way different opinions about it. They think, I got
maybe this from a feminist, a great word. By the way. I'm not clever enough to come up with this, but I try really hard on things I'm a little baffled on to get some perspectives from people that can help. And this one happened to be one of the feminists I respect. Want to know their name?
And I think intersectionality plays a huge role in that. Black feminism is going to be way different than white feminism. My version of feminism is not necessarily tied to race, but to rights and safety. I am a white woman, though, so of course I'm going to have white feminist ideals. I just want to recognize that because that's important in this society. I just think that being exploited in sex work, it's not objectification, because to me, that's not an empowering word. That seems something like, I chose this, I wanted to do this. And maybe some women have reclaimed that. Maybe some non-binary people have reclaimed that. People of all different genders have reclaimed that. And
I lost something in there. Can you say it again?
What do you mean? Where'd you lose?
I think all sex workers that are active have reclaimed that they're, I lost something in what you were saying, that
I think for some women,
objectification, although some people probably have, is that what you're saying? Although some people have probably taken that perspective and sort of embraced it for themselves.
Yeah, and that's fine, but everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Like, we live in neoliberalism. Let me choose what I want to choose when I'm picking my cereal. And I'm choosing the cereal that says objectification is not a great word to describe someone who went through what I did. I'm not an active sex worker anymore. Sure. So there's another niche, and it's niche, Ben. It's not niche. Niche. There's another niche to that.
Did I say niche?
You always say niche, and it just makes me so angry.
Because I read it so much in prison before I ever heard somebody say it.
It's niche.
It is niche.
Anyway, there's a niche in that.
It feels like what we're doing is, digging into the very edges of a half of a conversation that we could have just been like, well, we agree that, nobody should be objectified without their opinion.
I think we do agree.
Important.
I think we do agree, but there's a niche in all of this, and it's that I'm out of it. I had a horrible, shitty experience, and I'm out of it. I chose to be out of it. I know some women can't choose to be out of it because this is their life, their livelihood. This is how they pay the bills. This is how they afford fucking Bentleys and Birkins and all of that stuff. And that's honestly, to them, if they want to do that, that's fine. But other women, this is how they afford food and shelter and all of this. So I just want to point out that, to me, objectification is a bad word because it was used against me and I'm out of it. That's a niche I'm exploiting.
Is it when I explained in my classes that the person that agrees to work at the fast food restaurant is being objectified, is it a bad word? How else do I
But we
explain?
we went
We
through
don't
that.
need
That's
to.
protected
Well, yeah, I know,
objectification.
but then you just ended by saying using the word at all to describe somebody is a bad word, which is where we started. So it sounds like you do think you should never use that word to describe somebody, or just with sex work.
I just don't want that word described for what I went through in sex work personally. I'm not saying it's bad for anything. I'm speaking on my own
No,
experience.
that's what I assumed is like it. Again, my whole goal is to just be able to unpack systems of power and point to the stuff that we all take for granted. And I think, can I take your order? Is something that almost all of us take for granted. That we live in a
Yeah.
culture where that's just for sale, that you can get me to say that to anybody about any product and nobody really blinks twice. It's more about what will you pay me to do it. We've kicked that all the way around the block. I appreciate your willingness to talk about just your experience and how it's played out, because the stigma that seems to be kind of floating around the whole conversation is really thick. And I'll bet there's a lot more people from your generation that in the next 5, 10, 20 years are going to start to come to terms what you seem to be quite a bit ahead of a lot of them in doing.
Yeah.
So drugs.
Oh, drugs. Yeah, let's talk about drugs.
I was curious about what your high school, what are drugs like in high schools 3 or 4 years ago? Like, what
Mm,
were you exposed to growing up? What was normal? What wasn't? Was
yeah.
weed less popular than it was with me?
Weed was super popular in middle school. Also, juuling, vaping, e-cigarettes, that was
Yeah.
super new. I swore for the longest time that I wouldn't do that. I got to be a freshman in high school and I was like, fuck yeah, let's get the jewel out. Let's get the fucking blunts out. I was all for it. There was a lot of cocaine too. There was a lot of
Oh,
cocaine. I went to East High School in Denver, and it's an old high school. It's highly populated, and it's right on Colfax. So there's just a lot of like exposure to a lot of drugs, and a lot of kids would walk Colfax for lunch and be like, haha, like he's doing fucking meth, that homeless guy's doing meth and heroin. I would never do that. Then they would turn around and do fucking lean and coke before math class. And I'm like, you're not better than anyone else. But that's kind of the narrative we were fed, is that some drugs were better than others.
yeah, cocaine's interesting to me because it feels like it skipped a generation. I was into it, but
Yeah, it did.
when I was in high school, it was just kind of really the stigma had caught up and it felt like a drug our parents used. So we were more into like MDMA or designer drugs. Although I love cocaine because I was an injector. So when you inject it, it's a whole different ball game. Don't do it.
Oh, I know.
But what do you mean you know?
Because you talk about you.
Oh,
I
okay.
remember the
All
first
right.
thing you
All
know.
right.
No, I've never injected it.
I
Just
didn't mean
snort
to
it.
drag us that way. I was
Snort it and
suddenly
eat
like,
it.
I'm about to hear a hell of a fucking story. Yeah.
No,
But that
no.
maybe your generation came up and then heard our generation be
But
like,
the
yeah, it's not really worth it. And that put it back on the like, ooh, I should
needles
try
aren't
this out.
glamorous in
No, not the
in my
needles.
generation.
The cocaine, I mean. The needles have
No,
never been.
but that's what I mean. Needles are not glamorous. It's more about like pills that you can swallow, things that you can smoke quick, quick, quick. We want instant gratification.
Are they
That's why
snorting?
fentanyl.
How are they
Yeah.
taking cocaine? They're snorting. Oh,
Snort.
when you
Yeah.
said, because
Cut
there's
big
lots of ways
lines.
to take it, and a lot of like it's the weirdest thing. But the most time I was around people
You
who
think
were
kids are
blowing
boofing
coke,
it?
they are. That was the most time in my life when I saw it the most. Is like people when I was in. I don't want to say really into it, but I happened to run with a really druggy crowd, so I probably had more exposure to it than others. But yeah, lots of people that I knew were doing it that way as like a sexual thing to be. It's funny. It feels like I don't even know what movie it is, but there's some probably Quentin Tarantino movie where there's a scene where somebody's blowing coke up somebody's a stripper's ass or something, and it makes me wonder if it was life imitating art. But yeah, it was weirdly popular. If you were going to use it at all, the snorting was unusual, and it was like you use it before boofing. I never had this experience, but everybody claimed it also lasts longer. So it kicks in a little bit slower, but it lasts a lot longer is the argument. So they would take it and go out to the club. And I was like, grab me an 8-ball while you're in there, because if we're going to the club, every 8 minutes, I will see you in the bathroom. I am not doing coke one time and then going to the club. Who does that shit?
You saved yours? I did it all at once and then bought another one.
Yeah, I did good coke, I guess. What's coke? What's your coke smell like when you
So it was shitty. I was just on the cusp of like when fentanyl was being used to cut
Yeah.
things. So we were kind of like, are we gonna die tonight or
Did you
what?
test it?
No.
Never?
It wasn't glamorous to test it. And then after I had gotten out of the drug world, I was like, fucking test your coke, guys.
Yeah.
Like when I have kids, I'm like, test your shit. I'm giving you all these fent test strips. But it wasn't glamorous to it. Like, we just wanted kind of like the quick hit, like the dirty. So our shit smelled like gasoline sometimes. Sometimes it
Oh
smelled like
man.
fucking baby powder. And I was like, oh my God. When I had the baby powder shit, I was like, we cannot go to this dealer again.
Yeah, you at least got to know how to cut it. But like, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
weirdest thing. Like everything doesn't stick, but when I smell something like heroin, oh my god, I just stop wherever I'm at. Usually in the woods because it's
Yeah.
kind of earthy
Coke.
smell. And then, well, coke is always when I go into hospitals because good coke
Yep.
has it's ether, but it actually just smells like a sanitized room that they like tried to clean the air or something. It really smells like whoa, almost not quite bleachy, but like something like that. And there's a few things that probably like smelling a skunk and haven't smoked weed for 20 years. And you're like, weed. There's
Yeah.
some things that just never go away.
Oh, I'll tweak out if I smell Coke. Like there's no Coke around, but it just smells like that artificial kind of gasoline chalky stuff because that's what it smells like now. It's not good, but if I smell that, I'm tweaking.
I'm also curious what your generation thinks of Nicki Minaj and what's been happening
Ooh,
recently and how you read that. Are you watching any of it that she's now a big Trump fan?
yeah. So I heard an audio of like, I'm the president's #1 fan.
What do you make of her doing it though?
She's getting a check from it.
She's getting it. Oh, for her
She's being
appearances for sure.
exploited. Yeah, she's exploited herself
So
to
here's what's
make money
weird.
off of it.
Her brother, this is what I was curious if I don't think it's being reported by either side because it's kind of a funky story and it's not a fun story to hear. But her brother's in prison, I want to say in
Yeah.
New York.
Child
Right.
sexual.
Something
Oh
he's
my
probably
God.
not, it's a hard penalty to get out on, but Trump's actually pardoned people who are convicted of sex crimes. I'm pretty sure more than once now. I mean, guys on like a pardon spree. Trump can't pardon people from state crimes, and yet I'm wondering how much of this has to do with the fact that like we've been talking about all day, in neoliberalism, everything's for fucking sale and everything's super cheap. She smells power and she knows what it's like because she's been a powerful person for a while, and she knows that one of the levers in his thing, dude might manage to get this election stealing lady in Colorado out of prison, and she's here on state charges. Because he's got a big
true.
mouth and he's got a lot of power and he can literally do stuff that we need to fucking fix. Like, please, if you're
Well,
an independent or a Democrat, please get elected on the platform of I will take every ounce of power from the presidential position. Everything. You got my vote. I don't care which party you're part of. No, none of this shit ever again. It's stupid.
I mean, Nicki Minaj is playing into her identities, for sure. The Trump administration hates DEI, but they're doing it with Nicki Minaj. Do you see that?
They're doing it with everybody.
They are.
I don't know as I've ever seen a bigger case of projection in the Freudian sense. So if you see Trump say something is going on and it's evil, it's probably something he has been doing over and over and over again. They're taking advantage of their powerful positions to increase their own wealth. He's worried about that shit, seriously. They're using lawfare. They're using the law system to go after their opponents. Oh, he's worried about that, huh? DEI with them, I get it's loyalty. That's how he made his decisions on who to be the cabinet members this time as opposed to last. He chose people that would make the public feel comfortable because at least they've been in politics. But that means you essentially picked people that weren't qualified. Kash Patel, seriously, the Hegseth, who was like getting in these viral clips, his thing was to get drunk on New Year's Eve. Like that's what you were best known for. These are the guy. Melania Trump. She's got this new movie. What'd you think when you went and saw it? You were at the premiere, right?
No.
Oh, why not?
But Bezos wasn't even there.
Did you watch the guy climb the skyscraper on Netflix 3 or 4 days ago?
No.
Oh, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That guy got paid $500,000 to climb a skyscraper live on Netflix and maybe splat his ass because the whole thing was like he's not supposed to strap in or anything. Melania Trump got paid $40 million for her very impressive story, which we're living in a culture where this is now how it works. What happened as soon as Trump got in office? Remember Jimmy Kimmel? Remember the FCC threatening literally the people in charge of it saying out loud the quiet part will take their licenses because of free speech? Well, how do you pay a bribe to prevent somebody in power who's not even in charge of the FCC? Wink, wink. Isn't this a great system? Let's go to somebody and maybe just buy their story. I'm sure this isn't what happened, but it sure is interesting to live in a country where that's now just taken for granted. That's normal.
We texted about this. I was telling you when I got super high, and what if there's no media representation of a certain group?
Yeah,
Is
I was
that worse than
curious. I
stereotypical
was
media
curious what you were
representation?
talking about. So yeah, can you tell me more what you
Well,
mean?
I think it's the power of the narrative. Like what you were saying was true, is that it all depends on the power of the narrative. I think that having no media representation is great because then there's a niche. Let's say it again, a niche for for having
Heavens.
different stories.
Yeah.
But then, like I was saying after that text that you completely ignored, it's the power of the narrative. It plays into that. So
There's
how
certain
much is
students
that
that are
narrative?
mean to me, and they tend to be the people that I become friends with. You're the rudest, meanest, disrespectful people. It's rad.
Listen,
I love it.
listen,
Sorry, I interrupted you though, because now I'm being mean and rude and disrespectful. But I just,
listen.
it's good.
The entire time I would sit in your class and you would say niche, I wanted to
You
punch
should
you in
have
the
told me
face.
because I think I said that word like twice. I don't use the word that
No,
much.
you said it a lot. I think I had a
Maybe
tally
it's
on my
my
school
tick.
account.
You are. See what I mean? That's just. I interrupted you though. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean,
Probably
that's what I'm
completely
saying.
ruined
Like,
your train of thought.
this is the society that we live in, which is worse to have no media representation or stereotypical media
You
representation.
were talking about power then. See, I misread your message, but I kept thinking that you were talking. You didn't say which group, but in my mind's eye, I'm thinking about power. So I was thinking about groups that have very little representation, like, I don't know, Latino folks, right? Just it's not very popular on mainstream media to see representations of Latino folks. You were actually talking about powerful people that don't have representation.
No, I'm talking about marginalized groups.
Oh, who? Did you have specific ones, or just like you were talking in general?
Here's what I'm thinking of. Of course it's racial marginalized groups, of course, like
Yeah,
Latinos, African Americans.
but that's mostly misrepresentation.
It is misrepresentation. It's stereotypical misrepresentation. But I'm thinking about like the group of people who live on that island who don't want anyone to come near them. There's
Oh yeah,
and they
yeah.
just kind of kill people. There is no
I like
like
that
media
group.
representation. I like them too. I love them.
There is actually a lot, but you know
But
where
it's
you got. Where
not-
you just said that's it. That's the whole fucking story. You go there, they'll kill you. They might play
Yeah,
with you for a
that's-
while, and then they still
But
kill
that's
you.
the thing. That's not really detailed, powerful
Right.
narrative. That's just kind of like no media representation because we don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
But what happens when we know a lot about a certain group and then we can paint the narrative to our liking, stereotypically?
I was wondering when you were sending it, since we had talked about going back into sex work and how it's stigmatized and shaped, is if that's what you meant. Because one of us could write the same paper we keep revisiting here. Mine was about prison and how if you see it in any representation, from your granddaddy telling a story at Thanksgiving to a blockbuster movie to a rap song to anything in between, anytime you see a movie is presented in one of these three ways. I think you're right to say sex work is too, but no one's done that work. But there have been a very, 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 very few movies from the perspective of sex workers, like Pretty Woman, which is exactly what sex work is like. Remember Pretty Woman? No
I've never
notes.
seen it.
No, you don't need to. It's like the most glamorous portrayal of sex work you've ever seen, where she has a few challenges, but, lucky for her, a nice white billionaire comes along and just swoops her up because she's so cute. That's the narrative that we see. And then when you weigh that against, well, how many other stories of sex work have I seen or heard? Well, number one, most people that have been sex workers don't feel comfortable telling you, dumbass, because you're part of a culture or you've shown yourself to be somebody that'll just readily stigmatize folks. And then number two, all the stories you have heard are like, that's the good story. Most of those stories are the evening news and somebody's killed. And then they use that as a reason to either say the witness isn't reliable or the person that's dead deserved to die, or some, like you were talking about earlier, this implicit stigma that's kind of woven in by explaining, oh, this is one of those people you don't like a junkie, right? Can you think of some, though? Because maybe you need to write a script. I can't really think of any recent in the last 10, 20 years narratives. There's plenty about prison. There's plenty about all sorts of other areas where the public doesn't normally visit, but sex work seems to be oddly, aside from side characters, like Breaking Bad had lots of sex workers, Bad Santa has sex workers, but they're always they're the butt of the joke.
Do you remember Hustlers with Jennifer Lopez? The
Yeah.
stripper one. That was a good movie. I didn't quite like it, the portrayal of them, because of course they were doing something bad. Like I know
Always.
someone whose name rhymes with Schmarty B has also done this and been in court for it. But I think that paints sex work as a really bad thing. Like women are trying to take advantage of men, and it flips the narrative entirely, and it silences all of these other narratives about like my story where men kind of took advantage of me. And that's what gets the most representation in media is these like niche stories about all of these like about things that just you wouldn't typically think of. And that's also capitalism because and neoliberalism because we want the new greatest thing. We always want to be entertained.
I hate to put it out there, but if you're ever going to get like a master's degree in the humanities, they give you two choices. You either got to take this terrible thing called comps where they write 3 questions and then give you like 48 hours locked in a space to answer them in a full, basically write a thesis, or you write a thesis and you know what you just described? A thesis that then gets published and like me, you turn it into a book 3 years later and people hire you because it's fabulous. And unlike prisons, my area was explored a little bit, but yours seems kind of ripe for somebody to get in there and try to unpack all this shit we're talking about in academia and in popular press.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. Listeners, are you ready for it?
No.
Comment down below if you're ready for it.
Comment down below.
Thanks for doing all the editing. I hate audio editing.
You can do the next one. It grows on you.
No,
the right
I do. But I'm so tired from last May when I had to self-produce and edit that podcast that I did. Yeah. So I think I'm okay. I'm like recovering.
If I didn't like it, I definitely wouldn't do it because it comes up a lot, the sponsorship thing. And I'd feel worse about doing sponsorships today than I would have when I started this. There's not many spaces where you can turn on a podcast and hear no commercials and not only not have to like fast forward 3 times and figure out how many 30-second pushes do I have to do every time the show, but also that I'm not telling you shit that some organization made me tell you. We all just are like so used to a podcaster saying, and by the way, use Goodyear tires because they're rad. We don't even notice it. Like, what the fuck did this dude just say?
You know what's interesting is the NPR sponsorships, they'll talk about Google and then they'll be like, and TikTok just got banned. And then they'll say, well, Google is a sponsor of... I
was about to say, one of their goals with this, behind the scenes of all this fun, cutting funds for nonprofit radio and stuff like that, for people that haven't tried to think about this down the road, what you end up doing is forcing NPR and other outlets to do one of 2 things. Either die, and that sucks, or if they really think that their mission is righteous, you're the closest thing right now in some ways to a nonpartisan, non-propaganda media that we have, and you're everywhere. They deliver media to people that are in the middle of nowhere and can't get it except by radio. It's still at least broadcasting everywhere. They got 2 choices: die or conform to the market we've been trying to unpack a little bit today that's really complicated, even though it's right in front of us. And once they start taking sponsorships from Twitter, you know how this goes, right? Chomsky shows up. You can't violate what the advertisers or the owners say. And then, by the way, once it starts getting in the ad industry, NPR, the second they start funding themselves based primarily on ad space, who do they want to advertise with them? Apple or the generic shit phone that 5 people buy every year? Apple. How do you get Apple to advertise? You get Apple's audience, the rich folks who don't really want to be bothered with certain perspectives. You put their message on your NPR. This is all strategic. It's a 2025 level long-term game plan.
How do you want to end this? Because I'm thinking about getting drunk and getting a piercing.
I'm surprised you didn't start. What are you going to get pierced? People, your cocaine should come in a chunk. Not powder, a chunk. It should turn into powder pretty easy if you want it to. Try smashing the bag on the counter to make sure it's really coke. But don't buy powder cocaine, for goodness sake, and test it before you buy it, Maddie. I'll see you guys next time when we talk about a lot, including MDMA, religion, and we'll hit on some of the stereotypes surrounding drugs, like some supposedly make sex better, even though most of those drugs actually make it impossible for some people to have sex, especially people who use a penis to do that. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, love yourselves and the addicted people in your life. I'm Ben Boyce. Hey, look, I got weed ash on my face.